Hey everyone, I don't know about you, but I'm ready for some coffee. My favorite spot, because of the people, because of the coffee beans, all the good stuff, is Cafe 211 in Bentonville. If you're not in the Northwest Arkansas area, though, Cafe 211 also offers their beans and their coffee mugs deliverable, I think, nationwide. So you can create that whole experience from your home. Mauricio Guerrero is the founder of Cafe 211. He is from Guatemala and his coffee is from Guatemala as well. There's a beautiful story that's tied to it. I encourage you to check out the Cafe 211 website, check out Mauricio's story, the story of the coffee and the people who make it, and go ahead and buy some and we can sip it together during our next conversation. And you can use the discount code Cara Elvira 10 to get a 10% discount on your order. Good afternoon, Katie. I'm so happy you're here with me. Thank you.
No problem. Good to be here.
How's your day going?
Oh, it's great. So I just met up with my brother and we were tubing down the river. So it was a great day. I got to spend time with my nephews and
Oh, that's so
loved
sweet.
it.
You had mentioned tubing before, but I was picturing like water park tubing, like Wild Thought Wood, whatever that place is called. But you were like
Yeah.
straight up in nature.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So it's really close to where I work and like it's a really great little area because you can walk up there's a bike path and you can walk up there, then get to the top and then come all the way down. You basically end up back where you started. So it's kind of nice because you don't have to get someone to come pick you up. But it's a beautiful little river and yeah.
That's so sweet. So in Arkansas, we definitely have a lot of natural like water areas, but you always have to like bring someone with a truck and another
Mhm.
person with a truck and like
Yep.
really coordinated and be willing to be out there for like several hours. So that's very cool. And explain to us like where you're situated. So is this near in the DC area or?
So I live in Baltimore. We just bought a house about 2 years ago here in the city. So we're within the city limits. So we are, Baltimore residents. And actually, where we were tubing today was just Baltimore County, so just outside of the Beltway. Which, if you know, we're around Baltimore. We actually have a highway that goes around, and yeah, we're
Oh my
we're
gosh,
right outside of that.
the city and the nature, all the
Mhm.
stuff, and kind of a cool way to learn about you today and all the multiple facets of Katie too. So for everyone who's meeting you for the first time, this is Katie Gillis. You're a vocalist, ceramicist, organic farmer, all the really cool things that I know nothing about. So I'm super excited to learn from you today. So thank you again, Katie, especially while your family's in town. It means so much to me.
Of course.
I'd love to start with your personal background and where these interests kind of like play into your story.
Sure. So I actually just have been singing all my life, and I think a lot of vocalists will probably say that they started singing when they were little kids in the car to the radio, and after that I got into community theater and all that, and eventually ended up at Towson University, which is where I graduated, and I got a jazz vocal commercial degree. So I studied jazz mostly, but also classical music and yeah, it was just kind of from there, you meet people and uh, all that kind of stuff kind of falls into place. So I ended up meeting my quartet, which is I sing in a vocal quartet, so it's the four girls, and we're called GQ. And I met them all through Towson, so we just kind of found each other through different groups and ended up forming a group. And now we kind of go around the world singing and do all kinds of cool stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit
Yes.
more of the nitty gritty later. But that's the overview.
Yes,
Um,
you mentioned you went to Towson and you got this degree. I think you said it was like a commercial degree. What does that mean?
so jazz commercial voice. So it basically, focus on jazz, but basically other kinds of music too. So pop music, folk music, like all kinds of. It's kind of all wrapped up. So anything that you would sing commercially is kind of in that realm.
That's so cool. And did you know going in that a quartet was going to be the outcome of that education, or were you like, I'm going to go, be on Broadway or on a cruise ship, or just kind of eyes wide open?
Yeah, I had no like I say this to the girls all the time. Like if someone had told me like, oh, you're gonna like be in a barbershop folk music quartet and travel the world and do all this stuff, I'd be like, well, that sounds cool, but seems a little unreasonable. But yeah, I kind of just went into it just wanting to learn everything I could and like soak everything up and, see what I could make of it.
Wow. It seems like it must have been such a cool like education, and it just so brave from the onset to just go after what you're interested in. So often I speak with people, myself included, who just like start out with doing what seems like the safe and appropriate thing,
Sure.
even if it's like vastly different than what you want. And like what you want can be the safe and appropriate thing too. You just have to kind of broaden your mind.
Yeah, totally.
And so you
Totally.
mentioned when we talked previously, like the role that maybe your teachers and your courses had to play in the formation of this quartet. I'd love for you to paint the picture of how that.
Sure. Yeah, so I had this one professor who was a good friend of mine. His name is Jeremy Ragsdale, and he was really instrumental in all this because he's just such a positive person, and really any idea you come to him with, he's like, yeah, let's make it happen. He's super enthusiastic and encouraging. And so when I came to him, I'm like, we don't really have a jazz like group because in the classes you'd have maybe a like an off group, like a jazz quartet or something, but it's drums, bass, all that stuff. But I was like, well, what about a vocal group, like a jazz vocal group, like New York Voices, or and he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we spoke to the administration and got that class into the curriculum, so that, and it didn't exist before, which was really fun and cool to like be like, okay, well, this doesn't exist, but it should exist, so let's make it happen. And he was huge in getting that all together, and that's where I met two quarters of or a half of the quartet, and the rest is kind of history from there.
That's
uh,
amazing.
yeah.
I felt like, it was understood to me in universities, if you wanted to start a club, like go ahead, get the signatures, do it. But I
Mhm.
never really heard of people like actually starting a course.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty special. What can you speak a little to, like, was that like an overnight thing, or did it, I feel like that must have taken a bit of effort to make that a reality.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely took some time. Again, Jeremy did most of the legwork with that, but we were definitely working together to like see who would be interested in it, and a lot of the people were people I kind of knew from just the music department, who most of them were either in education, like music education, or in the classical route. So it was kind of cool to see so many people interested in a jazz vocal group who that wasn't their study. They weren't really there to do that, but it sounded fun to them, I guess. So yeah, so it was cool.
It's so cool. I think on so many, it speaks to so many different things. One of it's just like, if you don't see something that you want, like make it happen. Like don't be complacent in what's not there, but like try to, create the experience you're looking for. We only get to do these like undergrad once usually, and like things like that, just get your money's worth. And also I love how your story and you doing that open doors for other people who you said like you wouldn't have even pegged as, like you wouldn't have known that they even
Right.
wanted that. So like one person's bravery, let's just like create so many other people's opportunities, which is really cool part of your experience. I'm back in school right now too. I'm getting a degree in social work, and I wish I did undergrad the way I do my graduate degree, because these professors care so much about your students, like they actually really care, and it's so cool to work with them and see like all that's possible from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's so nice when you've got people around you who like are encouraging and want and see your vision and take you seriously too, which is super important, because sometimes you have these ideas and people are like, well, that's never going to work. And I've been very lucky in that I've had a lot of people around me, even in my quartet, where I'll come up with these crazy ideas and they're like, all right, let's figure it out. Let's make this happen. And I love that kind of attitude that people have when, when there's an idea, just like, all right, like, let's see if it'll work. If not, we can go a different route. But, you're so right, where so many things we think, because we don't see them, we think that they can't exist for us.
right.
But I really believe that, like, if you have the right people in your corner, you can make it happen.
that energy is so needed. And like, I don't know, sometimes I take it for granted. I'm doing this like study on myself right now and like my stress levels every day. And I'm making this little journal. And I noticed that like the days I'm most stressed are the days that people are like, that's not possible. You can't do that. Like,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't make any sense. And then the days where someone like, even with someone with no background in like what I'm trying to do is like, yes, you've got this. Like, game changer, just completely. So to have those ladies in your corner, like in singing and in life, and you mentioned that they've become like such a big part of, you know, your day to day, that's just invaluable.
Absolutely. Yeah, they are my best friends. And, I think I mentioned to you before, but one of them just had a baby. And it's just like, just this magical thing where, we're like, oh my gosh, you made the person, but yeah, it's like we've had so many ups and downs in our lives, and we've always been there for each other. And man, yeah, I don't know what I would do without them at this point.
I feel like, so what's, I don't remember now the name of that acapella movie, but they mess up because they only do the college years. Like they should, you got to make your own version of like the
Exactly.
lifetime of being in an acapella
Yeah.
situation. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And you mentioned too, so we've talked a little bit about your forming of the group, but I'd like to understand like, you know, the different roles that are played or taken upon people who are in an acapella group, and like
Yeah.
what also is your vision for this group as you do life together.
Sure. So we laugh because we definitely have different roles. And, you know, I think that that's something we've talked about, maybe even more than the music part of it, is just uh, we really care about each other as people and our like personal growth too. So we have, Katie, there's another Katie in the group. So we call her Katie Mack because she's the one she's very organized, and her skill set is definitely in like getting us to where we need to go and all this. And I'm definitely more of like the visionary person. I will try to like look at a situation and say like, okay, well, what's the big picture here? And then we've got Allie and Amanda, who they're both teachers. So they are very good at, just making sure everybody's okay. And Allie, of course, is like social butterfly. She's like, I've learned so much from her, just how to interact with people and always be positive and make people feel seen, because she's so good at that. So yeah, I mean, we all have our different roles to play in the group. But I would say right now, we're definitely, things have slowed down because of the pandemic. But we're still always learning and looking for new music to try out. And actually, right now we're looking forward to performing for the men's international. So, Barbershop Harmony Society is the kind of first organization that was formed for barbershop singing. And at the time when it was formed, women were not allowed in the organization. So a second organization was formed, which is called Sweet Adelines International. And that's the organization we're a part of. But actually, we're a part of both now because recently the BHS has opened up membership to everyone, which is amazing. So we are currently looking forward to competing next year for the men's international. It'll be the first time that they're going to have like women competing at the international level. So yeah, super exciting.
We'll take them. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So exciting. So one of the things I think would be interesting in an a cappella group is just like we play different roles in the tactics of like getting everyone to the stage and empowering each other, but also in the performance, like not everyone can be the loudest voice all the time, probably. Like I took an improv class last night, which is not something I generally do.
Yeah, nice.
And, we played this game where everyone looked at their feet and we had to try as a group to count to the highest number we could without people speaking at the same time. And so you get to kind of see the energies of the person who's like, I'm always number two, like, or I'm just going right now, or I'm never talking. And so have you learned anything about like, yourself in that kind of experience? Or like, I feel like maybe every corporate team should do some a cappella singing together.
Totally. Well, you're exactly right. We actually did this a cappella camp once where we had everybody close their eyes, and we basically were like, okay, we're not going to give you a note or pitch or anything, But what we're going to do is have everyone sing a note, and then we'll see how fast everyone can get to the same note. And it's similar to what you were saying, where, you know, there'll be somebody who is like, ah, and is like singing their note really loud and strong. And they're like, this, I'm not moving. This is my note. And everyone has to come to me, you know, and there might be more than one of those kind of people in the group. And then it makes, you know, like one of them has to decide like, okay, I'm going to move to the note that everyone else is on. And there might be people who just wait, they sing their note really quietly and they adjust to the note that they hear. And it's just a really good lesson in, you know, just feeling the energy of the group and understanding, like you said, your role within the structure. It's like, am I going to be the person who is going to take the lead on this? And you know, in barbershop music, there is a lead, which is the person who sings the melody. So that's the person who usually sings the louder, you know, who has maybe a stronger voice or a louder voice. And then
melody, you have, sorry, being like the rhythm or like the words of it, or I don't
the words, right? So they're the one who sings the melody and the lyrics. But in barbershop, everyone sings the lyrics together. It's like a homophonic singing structure where we all sing the words together and at the same time, kind of. So yeah, and then, you know, you've got the bass, who's the, you know, the foundation. And then you've got like tenor and baritone who kind of fill in the gaps. So you obviously don't want to overpower the lead voice if you're the baritone or the tenor, but you still have to be there and support them. And there's a ton that you learn about like yourself and your tendencies, and like, okay, maybe I don't need to be the center of attention right now, or maybe I can step back and it's okay to be in the background. You know, and that's an important lesson for a lot of people, because yeah, there's a lot of situations where people, you know, think that they need to say things or be in the foreground, and sometimes you just have to listen and you know, be not the center of attention. You know,
I think we all need to get into some acapella, because I feel like these lessons are very valuable, especially at this point in time in the world. And like sometimes they're uncomfortable lessons, but acapella can be a kind of fun way to learn them. You also, we spoke. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, there is a group that does a program called Harmony in Color. And so I'll give you the link to that later, but we'll move on. But there are programs out there that will teach you important social lessons through harmony. So I'll get that link for you and send it to you later.
That's so cool. I'm so glad that this like ended up coming up. And what I was going to say is, like, we mentioned the term like a barbershop, what is it? A barbershop quartet. We talked about acapella, and there's like different types of groups that someone can form. Can you speak a little bit to those like nuances?
The different kinds of groups that you can be in acapella?
Yes.
Totally. So most people will probably know the Pitch Perfect movie, and that is most people's view of like what acapella music is, and that is true. That is like what many groups, especially in college, like the collegiate level, will have someone who's a beatboxer, and then you have you know, people doing different things over top. But for us, we sing barbershop music and folk music. And a lot of what we have, we won't have any percussion for it. So it's basically just the melody and harmonies. And that's a staple of barbershop music, especially. And so, yeah, I mean, there's tons of a cappella groups that have different formations. But I think barbershop and like folk music is unique in that a lot of times there's no rhythmic element. Besides, you know, maybe an interplay between the melody and the background parts that create a rhythm.
That's so cool. I'm gonna have to like Google these different terms and like listen to them side by side and appreciate those.
Yeah, totally.
Intricate differences. That's awesome. Thank you for explaining them. And so you said you guys are preparing for a performance next year, right? For some competition. Just like, it made me think about or be curious about like how much of that is you guys making decisions and how much of it is instructed for you? Like, are you choosing the music you're singing? Is there a theme you have to stick to? Like, what is the planning like when you're getting ready for something like this?
Oh yeah. So we choose our own music, but there are guidelines and rules for things you can and cannot do that make it so that the music is not barbershop music. And those rhythmic elements are one of them. So if we were to beatbox or have other kind of like percussion, it would be out of the barbershop style, and so it probably wouldn't score well in competition. So there's definitely those considerations. And we know a lot of arrangers who, just nail the barbershop style and can and help us out. But yeah, for the men's international, you just pick some songs that are barbershop and you sing them. And yeah, there is like a, obviously an element of you want to make sure that the songs are true to you, and that you've done your research and made sure that they are, culturally appropriate and all that other stuff, because it's, I'm what's really encouraging is that the society is definitely taking steps to make sure that it's more inclusive. So that's super important to us as well. And yeah, so but otherwise you just kind of pick stuff you like. And but for the Sweet Adelines International, there is a package element. So you basically come up with almost like a little skit that lasts a certain amount of time. So all the songs, you try to make sure all the songs kind of go together or like flow. So that helps. Like, you choose songs when you have like a plan. So yeah, but the different competitions have different rules and guidelines.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. And I love that you mentioned like, ensuring that the music is like culturally appropriate. I think that that's so important, like in just in every walk of life, but we don't always think about it in our when it's not in our swim lane. So to see the way that like equity considerations are incorporated into the acapella world is really important and really good. So you wear many hats, which we've talked about a little bit, and I'd love to switch our conversation now a little bit to your other hat, which is in organic farming, and how the heck that came about.
Yeah, well, any musician you talk to, they'll probably have a similar story in that, unless you have maybe a cruise gig or something that's super consistent, you probably have some kind of day job or some kind of extra job. And for things like when a pandemic happens and you need other forms of income besides just your music because you can't sing or something. So I was actually just looking for something to kind of do during the day. So I also sing in a wedding band. So I do make music on weekends doing that, but which is separate from the a cappella group. But during I don't know when it was, but it was probably 4 years ago now, I want to say. I was just looking for something else to do, and I first got a job at a company called Relay Foods, and it was a startup that no longer exists, unfortunately, but because they were bought out by another company. And someone I met from there recommended me for this other job, which was somewhere in Baltimore. So I was, it was near where I was living, and I was like, oh, I love being outside. I love, nature. So the job was to run operations for this local, farm to table online farmers market type thing. So I was hired to do that, and the company also wanted to know if I had some time to maybe work on the farm as well, because here I am selling organic food to restaurants, and I wanted to know what I was talking about. So yeah, I ended up doing this beginner farmer training program through the farm, and learned so much and fell in love with farming and growing food and organic food and sustainable agricultural practices and all that stuff. So and here I am now, and I've been working there for probably at least 3 years, maybe 4. I'm not sure, but yeah, and it is such a joy. I honestly didn't know I would love it so much, but I super do.
I mean, the elements of like interacting with people and sharing this like really important knowledge that I, for one, don't have. I think a lot of people maybe don't have it is probably such a like a gift and a cool hard work, but
Yeah.
like a really cool opportunity too.
Yeah, totally. And same kind of thing where, I really appreciated that this past year, especially, we had a lot of our, we kind of shifted more to a like home customer model as
Mm.
opposed to the like commercial restaurants. And it was really nice because I know a lot of our customers were like, immune compromised and couldn't leave or older and it was nice that I felt I was able to bridge that gap between local farms and who are doing this great thing, keeping our planet healthy, and people who wanted to keep themselves healthy and maybe couldn't make it out to a farmer's market or didn't want to make risk that. So it felt really good to be doing that during the pandemic, and felt like I could help and contribute in some way.
Oh my gosh, everyone had to pivot so much in the
Mhm.
last year. And so to be at the crux of like literal nourishment of humans,
Yeah.
really important. And probably, I think that, the lessons from that are going to be applicable to so many different situations.
Yeah.
So there's different ways I think to, see the world and understand it. And I'm personally someone who like emphasizes connectedness. So to me, I look at farming and I look at singing and I'm like, I'm sure there's transferable lessons there, like at the
Oh
forefront.
yeah.
Um, but I can also see how maybe it's just like great to do things that are totally different because it switches your like and activates a different part of your brain. So like I'm just curious about where you fall on that spectrum of like, are you seeing applications of one together, or are you preferring that there's not applications of one together? Because both are valid.
Yeah, well, I totally think there are definitely lessons you learn from both. Like you were talking about that whole like learning your place in everything and learning, I'm definitely someone who can I just want to do everything. And sometimes I think I get to like, I hold on to stuff a little too tightly, and that's like a lesson that I'm learning as I grow as a person. And both with singing and farming, it's obviously there's the body connection of like my farming life. I see a difference in my singing, my like physical singing, because I'm nourishing my body, which is my instrument, so those things definitely go hand in hand. But the other side is, of course, like, you know, uh, when you're out in nature and you see the cycles of nature and how certain things want to be left alone, and that's how they flourish, and certain things need constant care. And I think people are like that, so I've learned some lessons that way, that there are times when you can just where you have to read the signs and say, this thing needs me to not do anything, or it needs space. And yeah, and so I think you can bring that into your like art too, for sure.
That's so powerful. I feel like I definitely run the risk of being like tone deaf to what other people actually need versus what I think has to
Right,
happen.
exactly.
And like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, a farmer must have to be so like agile and just attuned to
Mhm.
what's actually happening here. Not like what is the book telling me is supposed to be
Right.
happening here, but what's literally in
Yep.
front of me. Oh my gosh, I imagine like an audience would be that way too.
Yep, yep. And it's so funny because I'm working with the farmers who own the farm, and they've been doing this for for many years, and there are still times where Jack, the owner of the farm, he'll be like, well, let's try it like this, let's try it this way. It's like, you've been farming for like 20 years and you're going to change the way, because he's so open to just doing what works. And I love that mindset. And I think when it comes to like art or music or anything, it's like, having that always feeling like you're a student of whatever you're doing is so powerful, because then you do learn things. And there's things that Jack is like, oh well, that actually worked. Like maybe I'll make a suggestion, he's like, oh, that actually worked, and it makes me feel good because I'm being heard. And he doesn't act like he knows everything, because none of us know everything.
Right.
know?
I think that just the picture you just painted does a really good job of like crushing this stereotype of like a grumpy old man farmer who like knows what he's doing and just
Mhm.
does it. Like that's so important. And the idea of doing what works, I feel like probably kind of segues kind of cool into your appreciation for just like functional things and like
Mhm.
and how your ceramics are fitting into this picture too. So did that come after the farming, or were you already doing ceramics? Like what's the time, like the chronology, I guess, here?
So I actually took a pottery class in college when I was at Towson, and it was one of my, I was like, oh, I've always wanted to try this. Like I've always done, I've hand built with, just clay and made little pinch pots and stuff like that. And I always loved that like tactile
Yeah.
element. And so I took a pottery wheel class at Towson, and I just loved it. And the instructor basically, even though it was an intro class, like not for ceramic majors, she taught it as if we were all going to be ceramic artists, which I loved. And a lot of people were very like frustrated by that, but I was like, cool, like I'm really going to learn some stuff. And I was horrible at it when I started. I couldn't center, I couldn't do I just couldn't do it. And of course, me being like the stubborn person that I am, I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. So yeah, I practiced and loved it so much. I eventually got my own wheel and had that in my apartment for a while before I had to move. But really, I started working at the ceramic studio only like 2 years ago. So it was like the music, kind of the pottery, then the farm, then more pottery. So that's the order.
I love
Yeah.
that. And you have an Instagram that's like more dedicated to like your ceramic pottery work. And I would love for you to share the story behind the name of that channel,
Sure.
because I think it's so great.
So yeah, so the name is Wild Hands Stickanits, and it's kind of two things in one because it started out as a knitting Instagram because I also like to knit. Um, and sticka is just the word knit in Swedish. And I was dating a Swedish guy at the time, so that's where that one came from. But the Wild Hands, I think I just, when we bought this house back in 2019, uh, what I loved about it is like we have a pretty good sized lot for being in the city, but there's just fig trees and all kinds of trees that the owner before us planted. So, but it was like pretty wild. Like the whole yard was just, and I loved it. I just loved like that it was this jungle yard. And I mean, it's definitely been a lot of work trying to like tame it a little bit. But I still just love that element of just, things are growing where they want to grow. And I don't know. So that was where the wild hands part came in, because it is, pottery also is kind of that where it's things will happen if they happen. If things get messed up, it happens. It's okay. And it's just so tied with the natural stuff and the art. It is kind of the perfect like love child between the other two things that I love. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And the name, it works on so many levels. I love that it's like kind of gets inspiration from the specific location that's special to you. And so yeah, thank you for sharing that with everyone. And I'd love to take a look at some of the pottery that you've created
Sure.
and what functions it's achieving.
Okay, let's see. So yeah, I have a an album up here. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you.
Awesome.
Let's see, start share. Still learning. After a year, you'd think we'd have this.
It never becomes
better.
organic, right? It's always going to be second nature.
Exactly. So this first one is like kind of it's a video.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Screen here. Oh, I don't know how to do. Oh, okay. So this one's actually a video. So this was a commission for a local restaurant actually who sells a lot of different things, but one of their main things is they do a lot of ferments.
Mm.
So these were fermentation crocks. So to a little explanation to them is things like pickles or kimchi. The obviously fermenting is really good for like the microbiome in your stomach. So if you ferment a lot of things, it's just a really nice like health booster. And so these crocks basically are designed to have a water lip in them, so that you actually put water in it and it becomes like a lock for it, because obviously it's got a lot of beneficial bacteria, but any bad bacteria in there can cause mold and other bad stuff that you don't want to eat. So you'd put water around the lip, and then the bubbles from the fermentation will be able to escape through the water, but bacteria won't be able to get into the pot.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's like super simple of a machine, but people have been doing this for centuries to keep their food preserved, and which I find really fascinating. So let's look at them. So I made 3 of them, and I think I open it up. So yeah, so you see the water lock there, and you just would fill that up, put the lid back on. And the lid is kind of cool too, because you can flip it over. It's kind of like a bowl.
Yeah, so at first I thought this was like a guacamole maybe.
Yeah, so you can test your ferments. You can like reach in there with like some chopsticks or a fork or something, and then you test your ferment and see if it's ready. And if not, you obviously put the lid back on and keep going. So fermentation crocks, who knew?
That's so cool.
Again, this is something that was inspired by I was making pickles from things that the cucumbers we grew at the farm. And I saw some designs that were, old time designs for crocks like this. And I'm like, I bet I could make that. So it was a fun challenge because it was a bit bigger than stuff I'd normally been making. So yeah, that was a fun one.
So I just have a question. Like when you like you're making these pickles, you're like, this would be great. I like this little, device in my house. Are you Googling like whatever is the equivalent of like a blueprint in the world of pottery? Like, are you just like eyeing this? Like how do you get from that idea to the reality of that was just in front of us?
Yeah, well, totally. I will like look up different versions of it. So I'll go on like eBay and find like old timey fermentation crocks, and I just look at it. And I really love it when people have like multiple pictures with all different angles.
Yes.
Then I can visualize and be like, okay. And sometimes I'll draw it out if I have like an idea of the shape. Like for obviously for that one, I had to throw the bottom, and then I had to make the lip on the top. So I was like, okay, well, I probably have to leave some clay at the top, and to have enough to make the little lip, and then you have to measure it out to make sure the lid's going to fit in there. And the other tricky thing with clay is that there's a shrink rate, and it depends on the clay body, but it's like between like 10 to 20% or so. So whatever you make, you have to make it 20% bigger than you want it when you first throw it, because it's going to shrink down once the water evaporates in the kiln.
And is that all like eyeing like 20%, or are you like precision math, like measurements going on here?
So there are rulers you can get that actually have like measurements. So if you're making something like where the lid has to fit perfectly, yeah. But like luckily for these, they have like a pretty wide area in the water bath. So, it doesn't have to be super accurate, but you still can mess it up because I have. So you can still make it too small. So yeah, it is for me, like I will measure that. We have these like tools, it's like caliper, it has like, you can adjust the sizing. And so that helps a lot with just making sure it's going to all fit together.
I think that's kind of cool though. Like there's like, I feel like there's probably more like fluidity in like making pottery than, I don't know, making a dessert where everything has to be exactly the right measurement or it goes completely kerplunk. Like that would be a learning for me in pottery, just to be like still with like, okay, I understand what I'm doing. Like I don't need to measure it to the third decimal point. That's pretty cool.
And it all depends on what you're making. I mean, like you said, like I made a teapot. Actually, I should show it to you. It's up there. But of course, the lid it definitely had to be like a perfect, position. So I did get very like measury about that one. But for the most part,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, for the most part, it's okay. But then you get to glazing, which that is more like baking, because that is a recipe and you have to get that just right. Mm-hmm. And even then you might have like an area in the kiln that it has less oxygen in it, and it will oxidize, and it will actually be completely different than the glaze you thought was going to come out.
So the main lesson is patience and just like openness to whatever the world brings you.
Absolutely. And letting go of perfection, because it doesn't exist anyway. And most of the time it only happens when you're not trying. Yep.
That's true. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, so I'd love to. I'm sorry. I was just
Yeah, totally. So these were actually a collaboration with a fellow artist, a friend of mine, Emily Schubert. And so I threw the pieces, and she sculpted the faces on there. And it was a gift for another one of our friends. So yeah, these were super fun, because again, that's kind of where my pottery journey is taking me right now, is multiples and doing things like sets that all match, which is, like we were talking about, super hard to get like every curve right, and every, because like for these, you got the bottom that has to be a certain size when you trim it, and like the little thing in the middle, and how deep, how wide is the lip, it all has to match. So that's tricky.
They turned out amazing. They're just so fun. Like, I don't know how you guys thought of putting faces on the cups, but I love it.
Yeah, she did. She did a great job. I really enjoyed those. And then another thing with measuring, it's something like this. So this is a to-go like travel mug. So I got these silicone lids, and again, because there's a 20% shrink rate, I made many cups where the lid didn't fit because they were a little too small or a little too big, and this one has to be exact. So now I know the exact measurement it needs to be when I throw it. So
very good to you. So what do you do, when you accept what the universe brings and the universe brings the wrong size cup, do you have a massive collection now of different pottery pieces, or what do you do?
Yeah, I just say, oh, well, now this is a nice stemless mug. How nice. And it just has a new life. Yeah.
You have to have a really big like coffee or tea party at your home and give everyone a mug.
I mean, what helps out, what is nice is that we do, the pottery studio where I work, it's called the Playground. It's up in Ellicott City here in Maryland. And we do have a gallery downstairs, and, often we'll do street sales and stuff like that. So it helps out a lot when you have things like this. It didn't quite work out, but they're still cute, that you can sell at, and it's amazing to me because every potter says this, but it's like, there's something you made and you just love it. And people are like, eh. And then you made something and you're like, eh. And everyone loves it, so you never know what people are going to like. And so that's another lesson, is like, this could be the mug someone's looking for. Who knows?
That's so cool. I mean, you get to meet probably so many different types of people through their
Absolutely
in this pottery. That's awesome.
All right, so let's keep going on the slide here. So this is another stemless mug, but I really like this one because this is a technique called sgraffito, where before you fire it the first time, when it's still in the greenware stage, which is the first, basically, stage right after you throw it, you can paint on this stuff called underglaze, which is basically just clay mixed with pigments. And so that's what the black veneer on the outside is. And then once it dries to the touch, you can take a tool and carve into it. So it takes away that first layer and exposes the clay underneath.
Wow.
So, and it's a super fun technique, especially if you have, like, I don't know, different colored clays, or, you can really get creative with this. But, this was just an example of sgraffito.
Sgraffito. I love the term, and it does sound just so fun to go in there and just like.
Yep. And that one's fun because it is just like, you just go to town.
Amazing.
This was, so another thing about me is that this past year I got chickens, and I've been wanting backyard chickens forever. So I made a little egg container to hold my chicken eggs that I get from the yard. But of course now they're laying a lot more, so I have to get a bigger container.
Great functionality though.
Yes, exactly. I'm always, because I love that intersection of beauty and functionality. Like I can definitely appreciate a sculpture or someone, but for me, it's like if I have something like a beautiful object that I can use every day, that'll bring me a lot of joy. And hopefully brings other people joy as well. That it's not just sitting in a closet or on a shelf somewhere, that they're using it, which I like.
Yeah.
So this one, of course, so I'm not just into outdoor plants. I like indoor plants as well, and I do have a giant Monstera deliciosa, which is this plant leaf that is on this cup.
Wow.
And so I had to get. This is actually a transfer, an underglaze transfer, and basically it's the same material I talked about before, but they have printed it on a sheet of rice paper, and you put it on the piece just like you would like a temporary tattoo, and you sponge the back,
Oh
and
my
it
God.
transfers the image onto your piece. So yeah,
That's so cool. I had no idea.
yeah, super fun, super fun. So that's it with the lid on. And again, this is another underglaze transfer, but this shows you a little bit of, so this is a mixture of two different clays. So that's another thing that you can kind of play around with. As long as your clay bodies are the same, firing to the same cone, then you can play around with them a little bit. So these are two different clay bodies I mixed together to make this kind of creamy color.
So pretty. And what does firing to the same cone mean?
So different cones in pottery is the temperature that you fire it to in order to like vitrify it. So for like these, well, it's mostly for the glaze that you would use after. So these are all a cone 6 glaze, and I'm not sure about the clay body if it's different, but yeah, so it's just the different temperatures that you fire it to. Yeah.
Okay. And so when you set out with one of these projects, how long does the whole thing take from start to finish?
Well, it depends. It really depends. But I mean, typically it'll take to throw like a mug like this. So it's hard to say because you have to allow like drying time, which is not obviously an inactive part of your process. So you'd throw the body, which is obviously the up and down like walls, and then you would make the handle, which is like at a separate time, and both of them need to dry at the same to the same moisture level before you can attach them together. So there's definitely some time in between. And before you attach the handle, you also have to trim the bottom. So there's a few steps. So the whole process for like this mug is that you throw the body, you pull the handle, trim the bottom, attach the handle, fire it through the bisque fire, which is the first round of firing. And that is like a lower temperature fire. Then you would glaze it. And then you'd put it again through the glaze fire. So it's really it's 7 steps total to get it from not made to a mug that you can use.
I think I'd end up being someone who is like anti-handles. I'm like, we don't need handles.
Yeah, who needs them? Who needs them? Well, as you can see, I definitely have a few tumblers in there. Some people just don't like a handle anyway. So
tumbler.
Yes, tumblers all day, every day. So yeah, so the next one is just candle holders. I've been trying out some new stuff, and again, functional, pretty, all that stuff. I think this just has some cool carving on it, but again, a tumbler. There you go. See, stemless mug, candles. And this was actually just another fermentation crock. That was just one of my first like kind of prototypes of the design. And this one I actually made weights that could go into it as well. So if you have something like pickles, you don't want them floating above the water into the air. So the weights help weigh it all down.
That is wild. I literally would have never known these things.
So yeah, but I think that's and candles. So like that's another thing. You can kind of go into different realms. Like this is some beeswax from the farm that I used to make these candles. And of course I threw the pottery, and I didn't harvest the beeswax, but somebody else did. but it is from the farm where I work. So it was kind of a cool melding of the two things.
I love how it takes, a village to make these things happen, and how this is a real testament to like the different people who are
Yeah,
contributing to the process. We'd started this conversation talking with like the barbershop quartet world and the ways they're addressing and advancing like equity. And I'd love to understand too, like the ways that you're seeing that in the farming community, in ceramics, if that's coming up as well. So
nice.
that was.
Yeah, totally. So the program that I was mentioning earlier, which I'm glad it kind of has come back around, but it is called Harmony and Color, and it is put on by a quartet called Halo. So in the barbershop community, especially, there's a big movement happening to kind of re-educate people about the roots of barbershop music in America. And if you could probably guess that most barbershop style, the barbershop like sound with 4-part harmony came from African American, music styles, as most of American music does. And so a lot of what Halo does, so Halo is a group of 4 African American women who have put this program on, and they'll have different like educations in like social work and music therapy and stuff like that. So they're amazing, super great women, and they have a program where basically they use the acapella, like the barbershop format of lead, tenor, baritone, bass, to explain different roles that we can play in society, and how we can uplift certain voices, by sometimes getting out of the way and sometimes by supporting, and so it's really, really cool. And if if anybody is watching this in the Baltimore area or like the Maryland, I think it's in Frederick, where they've at least put on one of the programs. So yeah, I should definitely check it out because it's really amazing. And I believe they have a website as well. But it is like super important work because there are a lot of people who still want to believe a certain version of historical events, and yeah, it's the same in Baltimore, where there is a lot of food inequality. We have a lot of neighborhoods that are what we consider food deserts. And so there are definitely a lot of people here trying to work on that and fix that. So we have a farm called Strength to Love, and it's led by Denzel Washington.
Wow.
I guess it was at the time. I'm not sure if he's still there, but he's a huge advocate for like food equality. So there's definitely a long way still to go, but that is definitely something that, that I think that we need to put a lot more effort into is food equality and social equality.
Yeah. So if someone happens to listen to this, or is in their life and wanting to start like a farmer's market, or they're wanting to tackle a food desert in some capacity, I wonder if you've seen any trends in the years that you've been in this like farming environment of ones that are going to go better and ones that are just like not with, I don't know, the right approach. Like what makes those farmers market environments more welcoming, maybe to diverse groups or people who on the forefront might not think that was their space?
Well, yeah, I think it is the role of, people who are there at the farmer's market. I don't think necessarily it's the role of minority groups to, to change anything. But yeah, I think it is, I really do think that farmers markets especially are a very welcoming space for everyone, because it's something that we all like agree on. Like we all need to eat. We all need food. I think it's important to listen to the kinds of food people are interested in too. Because like we try to really have a very diverse kinds of foods that every like lots of other people might use or eat. Like we have different varieties that maybe come from France or varieties that come from Africa or and I think that's important too, to have like those kinds of foods represented at the market. But yeah, I mean, I think really just making sure that that food is cost effective too for people. And sometimes that because like a lot of the markets that we go to, they'll do SNAP benefits and other things like that. But that's often not enough. And as much as, so we are an organic farm, and obviously we are USDA certified organic, and there is a cost to that. For us to be certified, it costs like a lot every year. So I think the more people that go even to to other stores and buy organic food, try your best to make the market understand that like this is the kind of food that everyone deserves. And the more that we vote with our dollars going to the store, and even if it, like I said, Giant has reasonable prices on a lot of organic food as well. But, people are going to, the cost is never going to go down unless it is something that is like ubiquitous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead, continue.
No, you're good. I love all the ways that this conversation has come full circle. I think you were speaking earlier about how, like some plants like want to be left alone or need this thing or need that thing. And I think what you're saying about the farmers markets too, and ones that are really going to advance equity and bring people in, are the ones that are asking the community first permission. Like, we're not coming in and taking over and deciding that you need a farmers market. Like, would you like a farmers market? If so, like, what food is it going to serve? Like you said, like, what hours is it going to be? Should it be a nighttime farmers market because this community works all day far away from here? Like, should it be a door-to-door service? Because like so I think that that's really cool that you're putting that, you're getting people to think about that in this conversation. And I really appreciate you bringing it into this space. I just am so impressed by your story, Katie, and I so appreciate you sharing it. I think you're at the intersections of a lot of really cool things that are going to be so important for this world. And I'm wondering, what is your advice to people who are just like trying to live in ways that are true to their passions and trying to be good humans?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess it's different for everyone. But I think like making an effort to look at what you're doing and seeing how that affects other people is super important. But also at the same time, like, I think that we all just get this like one life to live. And like you said before, like, why waste your time, worrying about stuff you can't change, or, it's like, there are things you can change, and there are things, a lot of it has to do with your own actions. So not to get too deep into it, but, I had a family situation where someone really important to me passed away. And it really taught me a lot about like just the living your life and just trying to be a good person while you're here, and knowing that, life is not limitless, it's not going to last forever. So if you have something that you're passionate about, that you love doing, and especially if it's something that you can share with other people and it helps improve their lives, then do that. And don't let people's opinions, like negative opinions and naysaying, get in your way, because
so true. And surround yourself with a good quartet of people, whether they sing or not. Get
exactly. Find people who are going to encourage your dreams and say, awesome, how can we help? How can we make this happen for you? Because those people are going to carry you on.
So true. And Katie, finally, what do you want people to leave knowing about you, and what are you really looking forward to right now?
Oh man, what do I want people to knowing about me? Well, I'll say I am looking forward to just like living life. I don't know. I guess like I'm looking forward to Amanda's baby growing up and starting our own families, and I'm looking forward to like living in a world where people feel more welcome and more accepted. And I guess I'd want people to know about me, that it's all going to be fine. Like we're all here to help each other. And I'm trying to live my life that way and find ways to be that helper that I appreciate in myself, when people help me. So I just want to help. And that's pretty much it.
I love that note to end on. We're entering our weekend after this, and I'll be at a farmer's market, I'm sure, at some point this weekend. So I'll be thinking about you, Katie, and thinking about the ways that they're thinking about the world. And I just really appreciate all that you've shared and spending some time with me today.
Totally. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me.